Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Insomnia or sleeping issues are a major problem in the US. At least 30% of the US adult population are suffering from some kind of sleeping issue. There's kind of two components: falling asleep and staying asleep are kind of where people sort of separate out, and some people have problems with both falling asleep and staying asleep. And it's a real issue. And there's kind of no better Swiss Army knife for health than sleep. There's so many ridiculous things that are happening at night, so many different physiological reactions that are happening from the brain on down that are just really health promoting. And there's almost nothing that we can do in our sort of wakeful hours to match the health benefits of good quality and quantity of sleep. And I talk a lot about, dietary choices and dietary food timing and that kind of stuff, and food quality, and it matters. It matters very, very big. It's very important. But sleep is another one of those things that I spend a lot of time working on with patients and helping them to maximize their quality and quantity of sleep. And there's an interesting study that helped to validate some of the ways that we approach sleep that was just published recently in a journal called the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and is out of Columbia University. And they looked at how diet influences sleep. And something really key happens with our dietary choices that absolutely influences our quality and quantity of sleep. And basically what they did is they pooled data from the Women's Health Initiative, which is over 50,000 participants in this study. And they looked at all of their food data compared with those who reported sleeping issues. And they found something very, very clear. And what was clear is that not all carbohydrates are created equally. They basically separated out two different groups. A group with sort of equal amount of carbohydrates, but coming from different sources. Carbohydrates that come from whole vegetables, whole fruit, and things like fiber. And then they compared those to people that have, maybe the same level of carbohydrate content, but the carbohydrate comes from foods that have added sugar to it, fruit juice, anything that's like a processed, refined grain type food. Think of breads and pastas and crackers and chips and cookies, any kind of white flour refined grain product, or white rice. This is kind of like in the other sort of carbohydrate camp. And what they found is the type of carbohydrate really, really matters. And basically here's what happens is as a person consumes a more refined type carbohydrate, their blood sugar spikes. So I have glucose or blood sugar in green, and so your blood sugar goes up, and then what's supposed to happen, what does happen in most individuals, is the insulin goes up to help deal with that elevated glucose. So the glucose goes up, but it really spikes in this sort of refined process. When you have like a whole food, a vegetable or fiber or something like that, you don't get the spike of glucose. It's more of a steady kind of slow release of blood sugar. But the more refined and the more sugar that's in the food, you get a quick spike of it. So insulin has to quickly rush in. As fast as insulin rushes in, it brings that spike of glucose and it plummets down. And the body doesn't like this huge fluctuation of glucose. So what happens is some counter-regulatory hormones kick in to try to balance it out. And the counter-regulatory hormones is here in red. So after your blood sugar plummets, after insulin kind of brings the glucose and tries to store it in cells, then you get this counter-regulatory effect from these hormones, adrenaline and cortisol and hormones like that, that are really stimulating hormones. And so if this time frame here happened at night with your last meal, then in the middle of the night, maybe an hour, 2 hours, several hours later, this adrenaline is going to kick in to try to deal with this blood sugar imbalance. And these are stimulating hormones that are going to be very difficult to fight through to fall back asleep. Once this stuff is released in the system, it's just stimulating. If you've had this earlier and it's this kind of counter-regulatory effect is happening just before bedtime, that's going to be difficult falling asleep. If this happened later in the evening and you've already fallen asleep, but now it spikes in the middle of the night, it's going to be difficult staying asleep. So people that have, either falling asleep or staying asleep, it can be the same issue. There could be other things going on that we'll talk about and have talked about in other episodes, but this is a very key point that they even made clear in the study. The researchers really kind of made this point, and this is a way that we've been addressing sleeping issues. Again, there's multiple reasons why a person might have a sleeping issue, but diet is one of them. So we can kind of kill two birds with one stone. We want to get those foods out of people's diet for the most part anyways, get the foods out that have added sugar, especially if it's in the top few ingredients. It's too high of sugar. It's going to cause this roller coaster. And if this happened with breakfast, this can really put you on just this blood sugar roller coaster for the whole day. And guess what else can happen during the day? This isn't part of the study that was just published, but if this happens in the middle of the day, this is very anxiety provoking. So people that get that kind of anxiousness, anxiety type symptoms in the middle of the day, then what can be happening is their blood sugar is going up and it's plummeting, and then they're getting this counter-regulatory effect with adrenaline and cortisol, and that just is not going to make you feel well. And so this is part of the process. Could be anxiety kind of symptoms, but also it could manifest at night, really messing with the quality and quantity of your sleep. So again, really, really prioritize sleep. And we can see one of the key ways to prioritize sleep is make these food choices. Do this for a consistent enough period of time, and you can really start to see the quality of your sleep significantly improve. And that's what was shown in the study. The women who consumed more, fiber and whole fruit and whole vegetables didn't have the effect. So there's a really significant difference in the carbohydrate choices. So it's not just, hey, everybody has to be low carb. It's the type of carb that we're choosing can really have a major effect on all these different hormones and physiological sort of reactions in the body. So really, really make an effort to prioritize your sleep, especially during the season. A lot of people, we call this time of year oftentimes in the winter around Christmas time, flu season, and it's this kind of stuff I think that adds to it. We are around more people. There could be a faster exchange of viruses and bacteria and that kind of thing, but also oftentimes we're not getting as much sleep. We're eating foods that we wouldn't normally eat. We're getting this kind of spike, these counter-regulatory hormones affecting our sleep quality and quantity, and then our immune system gets kind of suppressed and we become sort of susceptible hosts to these opportunistic pathogens that are flying all around us. So prioritize sleep, make these simple dietary choices, and I think you'll be happy and healthier for it. So I will keep reading the studies and bringing you the information. Until then, keep it real.